What is up, Brad here with another episode of How to Win with Brad DeMint. I am here today with Daniel Kwak. Daniel, how you doing, brother?
What's up, my man?
Hey, good to see you, man. Just loving life. So I wanted to have you on this show because you are a winner, and I love what you do. You're a great guy, and you're killing it in the real estate game. So I wanted my audience to know a little bit about you, and they could learn from you as well.
Yeah, I love it, man. I love what you said. I'm a winner. The beauty about business is you only got to win once. That's it. You could lose as many times as you want, but all you got to do is just win once.
I love that, man. That's a great way to start it out, too. You know, I've talked about in here before, sometimes you have to lose to win, but you're right. You know, once you win, you kind of get that taste of winning and you just keep moving forward and, kind of like Rocky, it's all about, it's not about how hard you hit, it's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. So, Dana, why don't you tell a little bit of people, my listeners, about your story? You know, what kind of got you into the real estate game? What got you going where you're at now? You also have a very successful YouTube channel, you and your brother, which is a really awesome show. We could talk about that in a little bit. But why don't you tell my audience a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I'll keep it short because, one of my biggest pet peeves is when, podcast guests, they take 15 minutes and talk about themselves. And it's just like, well, it's like you're no fun on a date. So, long story short, man, I'm an immigrant to this country. I came here when we were 5 years old, when I was 5 years old. My daddy's a preacher. My mommy is also kind of a preacher, right? They both work in kind of the same church environment. We grew up very poor, as most immigrants do. And that, fast forward, that led me to being 19, negative $187.65 in my bank account. And, there I was. And I asked God to send me something. And I got interested in real estate because I read an article when I was 17 years old, and they said that 76% of the top 1% of people in the world made their money through real estate. And I said, why isn't everyone doing this? And so I started learning a lot, became a man obsessed. And then by the time I was 23, I had about $7 million worth of real estate to my name.
That's awesome. That's awesome, man. And, that's another reason why I really wanted to have you on this show is because I'm a young guy too. I'm 21 years old. And, I love real estate. I'm in the real estate title business and, my plan is to put a lot of my money into real estate. And at 23 years old, you already made millions in real estate. And you wrote a book called 0 to 75 Units in a Year.
Yeah.
Is that a little bit could you tell us about your first deal that you did in real estate?
Yeah. So my first deal, I don't think I actually have the story of how I did my first deal in that book. I have the story of how I did a lot of other things and how I even got into real estate. But so I always tell people all the time, the 3 Ps, right? I call it the PPP mentality. It's not the Paycheck Protection Program. That's not what it is. But there's 3 Ps in real estate. You got people, properties, and you got the problems. Most people focus, the real issue as to why people don't succeed in real estate because they only focus on 1 P out of the 3, which is properties. They want to go in, they calculate the cash flow, and, if it's a good enough price, whatever they'll buy it, they'll deal with it later. But a lot of people don't talk about the property or the problem. So the way we found our first deal was I like doing things the right way. That's my motto. I say, if you try to create a shortcut, you're only going to make it longer and harder for yourself in the long run. You're really not, the right way is the right way for a reason. So I like doing things the right way. And I had a mentor who taught me. I bought a bunch of courses on real estate. And one of the things that I was told to do was start building my team. So maintenance guy, property manager, attorney, broker, you name it. So I put out a little thing on Facebook, and this was back in 2014. So this is about 7 years ago. And I put out a little thing on Facebook. I'm sorry, it was 2015. I put a little something on Facebook saying that I was looking for a maintenance guy in the area. And so do you guys, those buy, sell, trade Facebook groups? So I went into those groups, and my brother and we would post these little things, say, hey, we're looking for a maintenance guy in the area. We're looking to build our real estate team. We're in real estate investors, which probably looking back is probably the worst thing you could possibly say on these type of groups. And then I had a guy message me. He's like, hey, I own a portfolio of single family houses. I want to sell. Would you guys want to buy the properties? So that's how we met our first sellers. We looked at it. We kind of did things by the book. We recruited our first investor. Guy invested about 40 grand. No, I'm sorry. He invested 60 grand. And for the down payment, we bought 4 houses, and there it is. But that's how we found it. That's how we founded it. We funded it, and it was simple. It was very simple. That's the thing. You want to keep it simple.
Yeah, you got to keep it simple. And, you touch on something too that I've noticed you talk about that you do in real estate is solving problems. That's really what you do as a real estate investor, and that kind of goes into how you talk about owner financing and how you can do that. And that all comes into solving problems. And you want to talk a little bit about that, about, looking for those problems, and what are some strategies that you have when you're looking for deals?
Yeah, I mean, everything is solving problems, man. I was reading a book this morning. Um, it was around 1949, right? It was the post World War II. And this is in Italy. There's a very wealthy farmer. His name is Ferruccio, and then Ferrucci, and him and his wife, they celebrated, their farm having some great times and great economic times even during the war. And so he decided to buy him and his wife matching Ferraris. And so the guy was doing work on the Ferrari because he had so many issues with it. And it turns out that the clutch, and I don't know anything about cars, by the way, but the clutch that Ferrari used in their cars was the exact same one that this farmer used on his tractor. And the guy was charging, I don't know what the Italian currency is, but he was basically charging 100 times more, like literally 100 times more for the clutch in the Ferrari than he did the clutch in the tractor. And so the guy met him up at a road show or something like that and said, hey, he talked to the Ferrari, the guy who owned Ferrari, the inventor of Ferrari. He says, hey, you realize you're charging the same amount of you're charging the same amount for the clutch in my tractor as you do in your Ferrari cars. That's a big problem. You market and you promote your cars as the best of the best, but yet your parts are the same parts I use in my tractor. So this guy Ferrucci ends up being one of his biggest competitors. He says, I'm going to build the world, a very world class with world class parts. And of course, the guy's last name is Lamborghini. And so I always tell people, if you start off with solving people's problems and keeping it simple, you got to keep it simple, right? And I have a really cool story that I tell people in terms of how to keep things simple. And it's kind of a perspective change, but you always got to solve problems. So even the biggest question that people have in real estate that I get all the time is, Daniel, how do I raise capital to do real estate deals? That's the big thing. It's like, Daniel, I don't have any money to do real estate deals, whatever. Well, that's because you're looking at it through the lens of your problem. You're not looking at it through the lens of other people's problems. It's all a perspective change. Like people, if you want to talk about how to win, right? Because that's how, that's what this podcast is named. Is you got to change the perspective on everything, on how you think about everything. So instead of saying, well, I have a problem of not having enough deals, we'll focus on solving the problems of individuals who have capital but just don't have the time, the knowledge, the strategy. So for them, that's their problem, right? So when I first started investing and raising money from other individuals, I didn't see it as, oh, they're giving me money. I saw it as, I have a bunch of people whose problem, their issue and their problem that they need solved is that they have a lot of money. They don't want to put it in the stock market. They need to diversify it, and they need tax benefits, and they want something more tangible. So by putting their money in my deals, did I solve their problem? Absolutely, I did. But you got to keep it simple. So I'll share with you this story before you move on to the next question. So in the 1970s, obviously, there was this big race between the Russians and NASA, right? So NASA represented the United States, and the Russians had their own space program. And the United States kind of went through this little obstacle. And it's you can actually look it up. It's a true story. So the big problem that the U.S. Space program had, that NASA had, was that they couldn't engineer a pen that worked in space, because obviously you need gravity for the ink to stay on the sheet of paper. So they spent millions and millions and millions of dollars. So after about a year, the United States goes, oh, we finally have this pen that can work in space. right? And they're super proud of it. They're like, oh, the Russians, they definitely have not developed such technologies. And the Russians, they held a press conference, and one U.S. reporter asked, with a very proud grin on his face, he goes, how does it feel that the United States space program has spent millions of dollars, and in under a year, we've developed a technology to make a pen that works in outer space so that the ink can stay on? And the Russian, short pause, and he goes, we use a pencil. And so that's how a lot of people think, right? So a lot of people in real estate, when they start a business or when they're anything, right, with anything in life, but especially in entrepreneurship and in business, I always say entrepreneurship is a lot like marriage. It forces you to realize more about yourself than most people are comfortable with. That's why I love being married. Most guys my age who have what I have, who do what I do, don't want to be married because they're afraid of losing it all. Right. But they don't see what's the gain. Right. So I love marriage because my wife has taught me so much about myself that I did not know it. Right. It has forced me to be selfless, so to speak. But that's what most entrepreneurs lack. Right. They don't keep it simple, and they don't know how to change the perspective on their problems.
That's awesome, man. You just dropped so much knowledge right there. Like, I mean, that was great. And really just talking about the whole perspective shift, because perspective is so important, and just the way you look at things. So that's awesome, man. I love everything you just said. And you're awesome. So another thing I really wanted to talk to you about is, your dad growing up, being a pastor, and also your mom, being involved in the church at a young age. How do you think your faith has helped you in business and in life?
Yeah, it did. I mean, it didn't. It helped me in business, but not in a way most people think. So I think our generation, man, and I don't know what year you were born, but we
2000.
weren't 2000. Perfect. That's a nice round number. So I was born in 94. So I'm part of the millennial generation, right? I think the millennial generation's from 1980 to 1995 or something like that. But the biggest problem, I think, that my generation or people who were born in the 90s and the 2000s, I think one of the biggest things that we have is that it's not the capability of whether or not we have the capability to run 100 miles per hour, but it's just a lot of times we run in the wrong direction. I tell people all the time, it's like the worst part is for you to climb up the ladder. You spend your entire life climbing up some ladder, whether it be financial, philosophical, spiritual, mental, whatever. And then you realize you climbed up the wrong tree, or you climbed up the wrong fence or the wrong building. So in many ways, my relationship with Christ had made me realize that it's not necessarily how much money I make, because at the end of the day, it says in Scripture, right, that He already owns 1,000 cattle on 1,000 hills. He's already got all the wealth. I learned this harsh truth, very, very long time ago, that God doesn't need my money and He doesn't need my help, right? But what He can do is he can make sure that I'm not overtaken by that my heart's in the right place, right? Jesus Himself says, where your treasure is, there your heart is also. He didn't say follow your heart. The Bible says the opposite. It says guard your heart. And Jesus says, wherever your treasure is, there your heart is also. So for the entrepreneurs in the room who are listening to this podcast, maybe you're in your early 20s, I say, look at your bank statement. Look at the money you spent in the last month, and there your heart is. That's where your heart is at. And if you spend money on courses, books, podcasts, mentors, and your heart is in the right place. Your heart is towards making a successful business and investing in yourself. If your money is going to buying alcohol on Friday or Saturday night, well, that's where your heart is at, right? You're focused on the short-term benefits and not the long-term gain. So in many ways, it helped me make sure that I'm not, I'm running, and God, the way God has engineered me, He doesn't need to worry about me going fast enough, right? I mean, my brother and I, man, we like to go fast. We like to go 1,000,000 miles per hour. When I say this, I'm not trying to sound arrogant, but this is just my observation. But I have yet to meet anybody else in my entire life. And I've met a lot of really cool people who move as fast as my brother and I do together, right? Who work as fast. So, my relationship with Christ has made sure that I'm moving fast. Yes, it's the way God has designed me, but I'm moving at least in the right direction.
I love that, man. That's awesome. I always like to say that I have one of the best business partners in the world, and his name's Jesus Christ, and he wants me to win. So, but I love that, he's making sure you're going in the right direction, because sometimes you got to think about that. You got to think, are you going in the right direction? And, I think that when you find out what you're passionate about, what you want to do in life, I think it's so important to just have faith. And, that's why, some people are afraid to talk about that. I like to talk about it every once in a while because just like I said, Jesus Christ is my business partner. So, and I love that, you've talked about that before. I've heard you talk about it. I love what you do when it comes to, just how real you are with people. So, I just wanted to kind of mention that a little bit, you know. I want to kind of go into a little bit about YouTube because your YouTube channel is very successful. What got you to start that YouTube channel and why?
Yeah. So I mean, it's like any other successful company. You have an idea and you kind of ask yourself, why isn't everyone else doing this? Why how come no one? So I mean, for us, it started in 2015. I think our first video came in 2015. My brother really kind of just started this whole YouTube thing, and this happened around the time when we started learning a lot of things that we realized wasn't being taught in high school or in college that we felt like everybody should know. There was one video in particular that my brother did got really really viral. I mean, I think we got like 3.5 million views on that thing. But it's a strategy on how to pay off your mortgage fast, right? So we've got clients today where they're paying off their 30-year mortgage in 6 to 8 years using the strategy without making extra payments, without making any additional money. It's just literally one little tweak in your finances, and you cut your interest down. But we realize the truth, right? How the banking industry kind of just I don't want to use the word scams a lot of people, but they certainly aren't helping them. That's for sure. So we learned that truth, and we decided the best way for us to have people know about this stuff was to create a YouTube channel. So we make videos on everything. I think we're about 125,000 subscribers, and we're looking to get that number up to about 500,000, hopefully by the end of the year. But we just, for me, as much fun as it is to look at the algorithm and see how many people are watching our videos, for me, I just want to put out the truth. That's it. All right. I'm not interested in anything else. I'm just interested in the truth. But the YouTube's fun, man. It's a fun game. I think everyone should do it at one point in their business career.
Yeah, no, and I'm probably going to start getting some more stuff on YouTube because, it is a great platform to really just kind of get out there and you can tell the truth and help people. So, and I think, I always talk about, if you help people win, you win. I got that from Zig Ziglar, which is one of my earliest mentors that, obviously I've never met Zig Ziglar, but, he's the guy that I love. And, he always says, if you help people get what they want, you'll get what you want. And I just say, if you help people win, you win, And I think that's the point of a lot of people, like even with me with this podcast, we're getting the value out of there. I don't get paid for this podcast. I tell people that all the time. I do this for fun because it really drives me to see when people are listening to this and they get something from it that's going to help them be better in life. So, and I feel like you're kind of the same way with your YouTube channel. It's like, if you can get that content out there, if someone can, listen to what you and your brother are talking about, it can really make an impact on their life. So I love that, man. That's good stuff. So in real estate, you're always negotiating, right? And, that's a skill that I feel like not many people understand. I mean, people do understand that, but what are some negotiation tips that you could give my listeners when it comes to negotiating?
Yeah.
You could say in real estate or just in life in general.
Yeah. So I'll just say negotiation in period, but I say don't be emotionally attached to the result. That's the number one thing. The number one thing is you got to be willing to walk away. Because a guy like me will sense something. It's like if you're emotionally attached or whatever, I'll sense it and I'll use it against you in a negotiation. But so don't be emotionally attached. I say be very good at asking follow-up questions. That's the one thing a lot of people really struggle with. If you think about what negotiation is, the process of two individuals gathering information about each other's circumstances and creating a win-win scenario. That's what negotiation is. And at least that's how I see it, right? Other people choose to see it a little differently, but I choose to see it as that, right? It's a collaboration. So I always say be good at asking follow-up questions, because one of the things that I teach a lot of my coaching clients in real estate is I teach them to say, hey, why are you selling? And then I teach them to ask that same question 2 more times with even more follow-up questions. And the big problem that a lot of people have is that they don't see, they ask these questions for the sake of negotiating. They don't ask these questions for the sake of gathering information. So I always say, if you're in negotiation, ask questions for the sake of gathering information and genuinely wanting to know. That's what's going to get you to that extra, right, in there. But that's the thing that I see a lot of people make a mistake in.
I like that. Yeah. That's why I wanted to ask you about that a little bit, because I know you're always negotiating. I know it's a skill that is very needed to win in life. And I don't think I've talked about it too much on this podcast. So, got to get my guy Daniel to drop a little bit of that on you guys. So what's a book that you've read that has impacted you? What's a book that maybe you read not that long ago or maybe a while ago that has really changed your life?
Yeah, I don't know if it's changed my life, but the way I see books is, the way you see books is that a lot of times I see a book as a brick, right? The more books I read, the more bricks are being added to my mental fortitude, right? My mental fortress. And the way I see it too is it adds to my arsenal, right? If you think about what your brain, is, right? If you see it as a collection of weapons that you could use in the field of business, I see the more books I read, the more weapons I'm adding to my arsenal, the more, things I'm adding into my game. So some books I've read recently that I thought were really good, Delivering Happiness by this guy named Tony Heish, which unfortunately, a couple months back, he passed away. He's the founder, I believe, and creator of Zappos. And then I'm reading this one right now. It's called Drive Sales. So it's actually by my very good friend and business coach, Woody Woodward. That one helped me out a lot. Got into some Russell Brunson stuff. And then, of course, the Bible. And then Tribal Leadership. That one's a really good one, too. Yeah.
Awesome.
So those are some books I've been enjoying reading them.
Awesome. Yeah, I always like to recommend books on this podcast too, because I always find that a lot of different people have different books that have changed, or that really have helped them in life. So I'm like, let's see what Daniel likes, what books he likes to read. And why do you think it's so important to read? Because that's another thing too. I know you like to read books, I do too. Why do you think it's so important to read?
Yeah, I don't think it's important to read necessarily. I just think it's important to always be learning. Because people can always learn. Because here's the thing. I mean, I don't read books like everybody else. People read word for word, but what I usually do is I usually just skim paragraphs and I just get ideas and basic concepts. Because I'm an author. From an author's standpoint, I not only want you to comprehend where I'm coming from, but I want you to actually take action. And a lot of business books are like that. Where they inspire action. They inspire action taking. If it's a business book that doesn't inspire you to take some sort of action or change, then, well, congratulations, you've just read a fiction book. You read something that's non-existent. You might as well have been reading something about fairy tales and dragons and, whatever. So what I try to do is I read books a little differently. Most books, they just have 1, 2, at most 3 things that you can really get, right? So, like the book One Thing by Gary Keller, right? It's about having one thing, and many books are very similar to that. So what I do is I skim paragraphs and I just write down ideas and things that I'm getting from the book. And as opposed to rereading the book, I just look at my notes and just see what the changes and the outcome has to be. So, I always tell people, study books, don't read them. But, other than that, I love podcasts. I love YouTube videos and just learning from people. If you want to have multiple streams of income, you got to have multiple streams of inputs of knowledge. That's what you got to have.
Man, I love that. That's awesome. That's good advice too, because, knowledge is potential power, but action is key. And, there's so many people that might read a book or go to an event and they just want to do it to say they did it. Right. And they're not actually taking action. They're not implementing what they've learned. I actually have a podcast episode, I'm not sure if you know that, called Always Be Learning. And I talk about how you always want to be seeking information because that's so important. But also, if you're just seeking information, but you're not doing anything you've learned, you're not going to win. Yeah. Because you have to take action. You can know everything in the world, but knowing and doing is a lot different. Like, you know, it's a lot different to actually go swimming than read a book about swimming, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So you got to take action. I love that, man. So what are you up to now, man? Where can people find you? How can people help you?
Yeah, what I'm up to now is, we're currently looking at some pretty large real estate opportunities. We're currently raising capital for what we've got going on. So we're actually doing some development and buying some cash flowing assets right now in the state of Florida, which I will be there in 4 days to check out some of those opportunities. So people can find me. They can go to my YouTube channel because I always want to give. My YouTube channel is the Kwak Brothers, and then if people want to email me, because they're interested in opportunities or they just want to say hi, my email is daniel@thekwakbrothers.com. So
Awesome. Well, definitely go connect with Daniel. He's a great guy. I love what he does. You know, if I love that you're coming down to my market too, by the way, down in the Florida market. You know,
it's warmer, man.
oh yeah, it's in the market's hot down here, and
Yeah,
the
that's
weather's
right.
a lot better than everywhere else. So you know,
Yeah,
I love it. So I love that you're coming down into our market, and you definitely dropped a ton of value today. So thank you for hopping on the show. Go follow him. Go check out all of his content. Let's keep winning. You'll hear from me soon.